everyone. Okay, so today is actually August 7th. It's Friday. Today I'm actually gonna go on a ghost tour in this place called Old Town Spring. So I can't wait to bring you guys along with me and explore this creepy town and hear some of the stories. So here we go. I know you guys can't see us, but we're in Old Town Spring right now. And here is the little map that they have. Quiet around here, very quiet. We got our masks, of course. I'm about to put mine on, but every time they have like a ghost tour, it's pretty quiet, pretty sketchy. But I'm excited. Let me show you guys the area. This is the map, Old Town Spring. We parked over here, but I'm gonna bring you guys along with us and exploring. So here we go. Hey guys, so I have my face mask on. We're about to start the ghost tour. Zoe is inside of this building behind me, but yeah, it's quite creepy. Especially like these little windows here. I don't know.
Farmers in surrounding areas didn't have a whole lot of clocks or watches, so they would set their times with the train whistle. And so, if the train comes by, it's extremely loud. You won't be able to hear me even if I'm screaming at you. But if we're close to the main road, we'll have loud trucks, loud Harleys, that one guy with his windows down, blaring his music, because there's always one guy that does that. I don't know who he's doing it for, but hey, one of you will date him. I know that. But if he comes by, we'll point him out. We'll all make fun of him. Now we're going to turn the corner right here. But usually when we do, we start seeing lots of cats. This town is completely infested with cats. You'll see them the entire time we're out here. Now, the most that we've seen on tour is 24 in an hour. So if anybody wants to keep count, let me know how many cats you see. And the myth behind cats, why a black cat would be bad to cross your path, comes from the ancient Egyptians. The Egyptians used to pray to a goddess called Bast, and it was the cat goddess. And they used to bury cats with their pharaoh, so when the pharaoh would die, he could harbor his soul inside of a cat. When the body was presented to him, he could reincarnate himself. Well, in 300 AD, when the Catholic Church demonized all pagan religion that was anything other than Catholic, Islamic, and Jewish, anything of the Egyptian traditions became synonymous with the devil and witches. And witches believe the same things, that cats harbor the souls of the dead that are familiar to you, and that's why they call them familiars. And so the cats that roam around here are supposed to represent the Indians that were once here and now tied to the land. And now their souls are inside the cats. And they cannot get rid of all of the cats, no matter what they do. That's why we like to keep count. And if they like it, they'll follow us the whole entire time we're out here. Oh, see? Hey. Oh, there's one.
All those cats, so.
I'm going to stop you guys right here in this little alcove. Now in this little section, this is where the Civil War came to our little town. Before everything shut down, there used to be a Civil War museum located around back. And they would have reenactments out here because of the skirmish that came through Old Town Spring. The skirmish that happened started in Tarkington Prairie, further in East Texas, came through Spring and ended up in Waller, Texas, straight down. If you follow Main Street all the way down 2920, it ends at Waller, Texas. This was the path that the soldiers took, and it made it a road later on. But in Waller, Texas, after that battle, now they have reenactments out there. It's about 3,000 people go up to a big old field, dress up, and pretend to shoot each other. Lots of fun. But then, because of that, they started doing reenactments out here in front of our museum in this little cove. There's about 100 guys that would come out here the weekend after Thanksgiving every single year, dress up with their muskets and pretend to shoot each other. But every time they did the reenactment out here, they did head counts before, during, and after the reenactment. And there was always 23 more heads during the reenactment than there were players on the field. Every single time they did the reenactment. Not before, not after, only during. And so word got out and they started doing reenactments more and more. And so people would line the streets right here where you guys are at with cameras ready. So as soon as they said go and those muskets started firing and you see those big black clouds of smoke, you start taking photos and you start counting your pictures. 23 more people than there were actually people. Now, I asked the guy that curates the place, you know, how they trap them inside here. And he said it's not really a trap, it's kind of a ward off. That they put archways on both sides. A nice little covered bridge here acts like an archway, and there is one along the back side close to the Hyatt's barbecue. Nope. Scraper, or do we need to move? We'll move in. Or he's creepy. Who knows? He's probably playing Pokemon. That happens still out here too. Well, archways you normally see on the outside of cemeteries, usually with somebody's name inside of it. An archway with your last name. Fair Cemetery, Thomas Cemetery, your last name Cemetery. What that means, if you're living underneath that name and now you're dead and buried there, your soul is unable to cross that archway. You're unable to leave the cemetery. Yeah. So if you cross through one, like you're walking into a cemetery, you feel the difference. Gloomy, sullen, sick to your stomach, lightheaded, dizzy, hot or cold, or really anything out of the ordinary. There are many different archways set up here in town just for this reason, is to keep whatever's in there. And this is just the first one that we're going to see. And it kind of acts like our test run. So if you would like to try it, walk from one side to the other and then back through, see if you feel any difference at all. And if you do, you may know what to expect when walking through different areas of town. So if you'd like to try it, please go right ahead before we move along. Yep. Walk through. See if it gets hotter, colder. You feel emotions that aren't yours. You get strange things inside your head. If you throw up, that's not common.
Go back yeah, we have to go back. You what?
Do we have to go? We have to go back there? Is that the thing?
Maybe I'll go away. I don't like that. Oh my god. Okay, now that's weird.
We'll keep moving on. If you don't know what the Mason is, the History Channel or National Treasure can probably tell you everything you want to know. I can't tell you a whole lot about them because I'm not a Mason, and there's such a secret society that you're not supposed to talk about it at all if you're not a Mason. And they're even so secretive that they paint all the windows upstairs so we don't know what they're doing. All the way around. But what I can tell you is why they're here in this location. What used to be here was a row of 3 houses, and the house in the middle was called the Zwink House. Mr. and Mrs. Zwink used to live there, and Mrs. Zwink shot Mr. Zwink out on the front porch. And so afterwards, she was so distraught that she wanted to speak with her dead husband. So she would do seances and Ouija boards and all kinds of strange things inside the house, trying to speak with him. When the townspeople found out what she was doing, she was politely asked to leave. Right out of town. They weren't very nice to her. But the Zwink house became empty for a long time, and it got boarded up, became a small dress shop for a time, but when it was a dress shop, it caught on fire, just like everything else here in town. But this fire was very different. It caught on fire, blew out the windows to the house, caught the other 2 houses alongside it on fire, and burnt those to the ground, but never burnt the Zwink house. And the arson investigators went inside. They couldn't find where the fire actually started. So that's when the Masonic Lodge came in They bought this wing house, boarded it up, moved it in East Texas, and has never disclosed the location. They stuck their spot right on top of it to make a good spot out of a bad one. And they stuck the fire department right across the street. It's a fully working fire department in a town that no one lives in. Things still spontaneously combust down here all the time. We have fires down here all the time. So a lot of my stories start with this. But after this was moved and everything burnt down here, the only thing left from the original row of 3 houses is what we call the ice house, and that's that scary looking brick building that you can barely see from the road. Right back there. We're gonna walk back there right now.
I'm feeling nauseous.
Now, I do recommend you take photos while you're out here on tour because there's a lot of ghost photos that you catch. There's 3 types of ghost photos that you're going to catch. There's orbs, vortexes, and apparitions. An orb is a round ball. The way you're going to
Pretty young thing.
If anybody eating Pkwy's restaurant? Well, Puff Bellies is a replica of the original train depot. They used to be here in town. The original depot used to sit across the tracks in between the 2 tracks and face north. And then, after they got rid of that one and it became decrepit and it fell down, the city of Spring wanted to find another train station that looked exactly like the old one. They found this one in Lovelady, Texas. Lovelady is a town in East Texas, about 300 people, so they were glad to get rid of their depot because they had a switchman got run over by his own train. And they believed it to be haunted, and they were trying to get rid of it anyway. So they got moved down here. What had happened was that, does anybody know what a cabooseman's job used to be on old trains? Besides wave at you and throw Tootsie Rolls down parade? No. They don't teach you this stuff in school anymore. So a cabooseman used to be in the back of the train and give hand and light signals to the engineers because this is how they communicated from one side of the train to the other before there was radios. And so there was a train docked at the station there at Lovelady, and the cabooseman sees a train coming down the same track. So they're about to have an accident. So the cabooseman jumps out of his train, starts running down the track, waving his light. His engineer sees it as a sign to back up, so backs up over the cabooseman and beheads him. Now the train workers take his body and his head into the train station and lay it on the floor, where his soul was said to stay. Now Pkwy's restaurant has burnt down twice, everything except for the floor. So you come eat here, it's new walls, old floor. And because the floor is still here, we believe that the cabooseman is still stuck to it. And this is where we get the only police recorded haunting in Old Town Spring. Now, what I mean by that was in 2005, there's a man coming to these tracks one night. The report says about midnight. He's pulling up to the tracks and sees a man running back and forth, waving a light. When he actually stops, the man is no longer there and there's no lights. He calls the cops, tells the cops there's somebody out here trying to scare people. And the cops come out, they don't find anybody. They take the original caller to the police station, they fill out a report. So it's a police recorded haunting of the headless cabooseman still running up and down the tracks in front of his depot. Now, ever since that report's come out, you've had 15 years of that same local story. That it's 3 o'clock in the morning, it's midnight, it's sometime in the middle of the night, you're driving up here, you see lights, you see trains, you see something, but if you actually stop, nothing is out here. Now, if this ever happens to you, please give me a call. I want to see that stuff too. Everybody does. But you can look up report after report, the same thing happening over and over. If we don't get that story, we get the story of the ghost train. That's where the arms come down, you feel the rush of the train, sometimes you even hear the whistle, like no train. Anybody ever been stuck at a cross track and no train goes by? Kind of mad. Next time that happens, roll your window down, stick your head out, see if you actually feel some kind of rush of that train, because that might be what's actually happening. Now, most of our stories about that comes from our local crawfish festival, and if you know what our crawfish festival is like, it is 10,000 people a day for 2 weekends out of April that flood these streets, eat crawfish, and get drunk.
This looks like old.
Right here, I'll stand in the street so you don't have to. Now this section is nicknamed Callout Square. Now I've been nicknamed Callout Square. What that means is there are so many gunfights in town. Most of them happened right here because this was the square in town. Now, if you envision the place as it was in the early 1900s, as the Wild West, the train depot sat right there across the tracks. You got off the depot, this was your local saloon, the grocery store sat on that side, the Klein Hotel was right behind you. This was where everybody hung out because this is where everybody got off the train. Now, 4,000 people in residence, that doesn't include how many people came, they're still here. And if you spent 3 months on a boat, and you didn't like the people you were traveling with, and you got here, it's Texas. We gave you a gun. Because that's what we do. And so most of your gunfights happened right after you got off the depot. But it happened so often that these sheriffs and constables came up with rules. It said if you're going to shoot each other, it need to be handled and maintained. So the rule was they went down to the local sheriff's office, which was upstairs in Winky Brothers' room. It was the window to the left. He brought you down here, you stood back to back, you took your 10 paces, you turned around and you fired, right in front of everybody. Now, if you didn't shoot one another or one of you didn't die, the constable shot you both. It was all or nothing in this town. Then they drug your bodies out of town and buried you in the town cemetery. Anybody want to take a guess where the town cemetery is at? Oh, you probably drove over it trying to get here. It's on I-45 in Cypresswood. It's one exit down from turning down the street to come here. If you would have taken one exit on the northbound side, you would have passed a cemetery on the freeway itself. In between the feeder and the overpass is a small cemetery that is Wunchy family plot. It has 16 graves from all Wunchy family. Now, that cemetery was 300 acres worth of cemetery. Texas is one of the 4 states in the United States that does not remove bodies when building over cemeteries. Yes. Love you. Now, our most famous one is the Black Hope Cemetery in Crosby, Texas. You can look up the Black Hope curse. You can Google that, and they can tell you all about it. It was an old cemetery that they built a housing development out of in the 60s. All this weird stuff started happening in the houses, so they moved all the houses back out. Now it's kind of back to the original cemetery. But Texas, you have those cemeteries everywhere that's completely forgotten about or built over because they just started building on top of things. And so when they built our freeway, they didn't remove anybody, but because the Wunchy says so much to do with the foundation of the town, they never removed Wunchy family plots. So that is what's there today. They didn't remove anybody else either. But that 300 acres, and when you drive back down, you will see Spring High School, Target, Cons, Best Buy, the golf facility, Green Groves, everything in that section. And the cemetery is right across the street from a Starbucks, because what cemetery without a Starbucks? So if you go, you can see it. And that intersection has more kids hit, more accidents than any other spot, more metropolitan area every single year. So it's still a very dangerous place to be. Now, the Wunchy family being the founder, kind of one of the founders of the town, this was their saloon that they started in 1902 with the railroad opening. And it was Dale and Charlie Wunchy that started the place, and Dale came to live there when his wife left him for another man, so he had a large void. And see where the bars were on the top side of the windows, where the holes are. Now, it was the jail, because the sheriff's office was right down the street. And it was the jail between 1908, and moved the jail from this side of town to the other side of town, where we now have the jailhouse, bar, and saloon. Well, they still have cells, still set up in back, so if you're too rowdy, they will lock you in and call the cops. Or you can go back there, go visit, lock yourself in, take a picture, and give a good thumbs up. I've been here my whole life. But because it was a heavily fortified place, they changed it from the jail to the bank. And when it was the bank, it got robbed by somebody famous. Anybody? Famous Texas bank robbers? Don't think yet. Bonnie and Clyde. Yes, ma'am. Do your homework, I like that. Yes, Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie grew up in Hearn, Texas, not far from here, just south of Waco, and she moved to West Dallas where she met Clyde Burrow, and they used to drive from Dallas to Houston, all through East Texas, and rob banks. They were ambushed on the back of Louisiana Road and shot up. If you ever want to go see their cars in the Smithsonian in D.C., and it's a really cool exhibit, it's a car full of bullet holes and blood. But the story goes, when they robbed this place, because it was a very good place for them to hit, all your railroad money came through this town. So the story goes, they parked right out here in front of the bank. They traveled with a man named George. George ran to the backside as a lookout. Bonnie and Clyde, they ran inside, shot the bank manager and the two tellers. They stole $7,500 from the bank vault, which is still open every single day. And they said, you can come see the vault that they robbed. It was a small little brick room that they used to use for solitary confinement when it was the jail, and the safe was about this big. It's a small little iron hole. I don't like to walk in there because I'm claustrophobic. 30 miles an hour. They don't care. Now, after stealing the money and after shooting the people, they came right back out here where George met them in front of their car, and they unloaded their guns on the outside of the building. If you look close enough, you can still see all the bullet holes all over the outside. They're everywhere. This is just our most visible.
Okay guys, so that wraps up our ghost tour. It was quite fun, but we did get bit by a few mosquitoes. So yeah, we're on our way home. Did you feel any energy?
No.
I felt a little bit in this like little area. I'll show you a picture of that right now. But we're on our way home. Catch you guys later. Hope you enjoyed. Bye.